I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey, you guys, and welcome back to the News du Jour, a calmer space to consume the news. Oh my gosh, I am so happy to be here right now. You guys, I had a huge concussion and a massive amount of news to catch you guys up on has piled up. I'm so sorry. Basically, in case you didn't see it on social media, my son headbutted me very aggressively. That's like the only word I can think to use, but basically he was like sitting on me and playfully, he thought this whole thing was really funny, he threw his head backwards and kind of used like gravity, like he fell onto my head and just absolutely smashed the shit out of both of our heads. However, he thought this was really, really funny, and it was like first thing in the morning. I was so confused. It happened over a week ago now, but the symptoms didn't really come on until like a few days later. And it just absolutely took me out. And I'm really sorry, you guys. I've been in and out of different medical facilities. I went to the ER, I went to urgent care, just trying to figure out what it is and make sure it wasn't something more serious because of all the very serious symptoms I was having. But I really, really missed you guys. And I missed being in this chair, reporting the news to you. And there's been so much incredible news going on. So I'm really excited to, start chipping away at this mountain. I'm still not feeling 100%, but I'm feeling so much better than I've been. So my plan today is to just make a start. This will be a longer episode. And we're basically just going to chip away at what news we have to cover. Hopefully, actually, for sure, by the end of the week, we will have you guys fully caught up to everything that happened while I was out, as well as what's happening this week. So let's dive into this extra long episode. So first and foremost, we have two mini stories, only two somehow, but I want to let you guys know that striking Hollywood actors agreed to a deal. The actors' strike has come to a close. You guys know we've been covering this for a long time and they had been making headway, but the actors in the final deal made substantial gains when it comes to both pay as well as AI rights. So this is an incredible win. Congratulations. So for our second mini story, she tried her damnedest to wiggle out, you guys, but Ivanka Trump took the stand in her father and brother's civil trial in New York. It seems that there were a lot of the similar tactics used to what her brother used, basically simply failing to recall a lot of answers or situations and avoiding having to answer any questions if she could. That seems to be the theme. And as far as I can tell, there were no bombshells, but I just wanted to let you guys know that she did end up taking the stand. Okay, so the Republican debates happened this past week. I did not watch them because I was concussed and trying to limit screen time. But from what I have read since then, it was pretty on par with the other debates, except it does seem that Nikki Haley may be pulling ahead in this race. So I personally have felt, and again, this is a personal opinion, with the debates, a lot of my coverage with it is my opinion, and there are things that can be debated, right? But I felt that she was holding back a little and staying kind of neutral through a lot of the heated debating in the other two debates, and maybe that has paid off. She kind of let DeSantis run himself into the ground, and she was waiting there, all experienced and steadfast and neutral and ready to impress those kind of George Bush type Republicans who have been praying for a savior for many years, because that type of Republican simply just does not stand behind someone like Trump. She has certainly secured that sort of middle of the road Republican vote, but the Trump base is untouchable. You guys, they are unwavering in their support for the former president. So short of getting him like kicked off the ticket or something related to that, maybe something related to his ongoing court cases, it looks like she will be a solid number 2 to President Trump. Now, this race could, at a minimum, help set the stage for a future run for Nikki Haley. Unlike her competitors, she's only 51 years old, and she could run in the future with somebody like Trump cleared out of her path. Additionally, she has been given a nickname by the former president. He is calling her Bird Brains. And apart from that being pretty off base, she is an incredibly intelligent woman. He's showing his cards a bit because by designating her this denigrating nickname, it appears he has come to view her as a threat. So we will definitely keep you guys posted. This is an interesting moment for Nikki Haley, and we'll see how she handles it. Stay tuned. And next, I wanted to cover the elections. There have been elections since I was concussed. You guys, I've been so depressed and frustrated. This is my shit. This is what I live for. Debates, elections, breaking down complicated international issues. And yet, I have been so sick and so headachy and so fatigued. Anywho, there's so much to go over here. But let's just say it was a big night for the blue. So the Democrats swept up these elections, you guys, winning several pivotal seats and further painting Donald Trump's Republican Party as a losing one. This is not a good look for them going into the presidential elections. And it's certainly going to have, party heads circling the wagons and figuring out where they need to pivot. What's even crazier than that, though, is that 2 states have now allowed for the public to vote on abortion access. And guys, the voters were clear. They want abortion access for the women of their states. And by the way, these were 2 states that were Ohio and Virginia. They're not terribly blue states. In fact, Ohio has been increasingly conservative. But these are more neutral swing states. Now, both Ohio and Virginia have preserved the right to abortion access for their women. No more sending 10-year-olds across state lines to get abortions, or women bleeding out because their doctor is trying to follow murky legislation that was written by politicians rather than physicians. Now, some Republicans still plan to challenge these votes in a court of law, but we'll see if they can get past the very clear will of the people, and we'll definitely keep you guys posted. Okay, guys, and for our next story, I wanted to let you know about an earthquake in Nepal that was a 5.6 magnitude. So I know, you guys, these stories get a bit repetitive. Natural disaster, another one, in a faraway place. People are killed, people are displaced. It is the same thing over and over again. But it is so important to remind ourselves through these stories that the climate crisis is still very real and threatening humanity's very existence. So I'm going to make sure that we are covering all these natural disasters, no matter how far away they are. Let's get into it. So Nepal is a country that is nestled into the Himalayas and kind of, next door to India. Luckily, the devastating earthquake did hit a more rural area of this country, and yet it still managed to take the lives of more than 150 people. Hundreds more were injured, and I'm sure many were trapped. They are working on getting people untrapped as swiftly as they can. But again, this is a remote area of the country, and they don't have the best resources in terms of removing large rubble, things of that nature. Tremors for this earthquake were felt as far away as Delhi in India. Being that Nepal is along the Himalayas, as we mentioned, they do experience a lot of seismic activity. The Red Cross is assisting in these areas with the relief efforts as well. So if you're interested in giving to the International Committee of the Red Cross and their work overseas, I will have a link in our show notes for them anyway, for their very important work in Gaza. So they are there if you guys want to donate. And what I always try and remember is how I felt when we weren't able to be in our home for 2 weeks because of an ice storm. It really shook up our lives. You just keep in mind that when someone doesn't have access to their home, they don't feel stable, they don't have their belongings, they can't work a lot of times, internet is spotty. It's just, there's so many ripple effects that we don't even think of when we're not the ones in the middle of a disaster like this. So our prayers are up and our donations are with you guys. Again, there's a link in our show notes. And in related news, an Icelandic town evacuated 4,000 people, according to the New York Times, due to earthquakes that could signal a volcanic eruption. As a reminder, science shows us that these types of sudden weather events will become more frequent, more erratic, and more severe as we dive deeper into the climate crisis. According to the New York Times, though, the very first plant in the United States has opened to suck carbon out of our atmosphere. This could be a very positive step for both the economy and the climate if all goes well. As with everything with the climate, there will be bumps in the road with this concept, but I think this idea really has the potential to be a game changer when it comes to the climate crisis. So we'll see, and we'll be here to keep you guys posted. And next up in news, before we jump into Israel and Gaza, WeWork has declared bankruptcy. So if you watched the short series on this business starring Anne Hathaway and Jared Leto, you understand why this was inevitably going to end up here. But the value of this company has taken a complete nosedive. Back in 2019, the company WeWork was worth about $47 billion, again, according to the New York Times. Today, it is worth $45 million. So they will file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which will essentially allow them to completely restructure the company in hopes that they can save it. We'll definitely keep you guys posted. And lastly for today, we'll spend the remainder of the episode, which will be a little while. We're not near finished, but we will spend the remainder of this episode covering Israel and Gaza. Content warning here, this story involves war. So protests have broken out all over the world calling for a ceasefire. However, Israel has said that a ceasefire will not happen until Hamas surrenders and the hostages are freed. This is basically the same conversation that we have been having over and over again since the bombing started, and it will continue to go round and round, as far as I can tell. Israel has also agreed to a 4-hour daily pause in fighting to allow for the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza. People are also now finally being allowed to leave Gaza, which is really important because otherwise they would simply be trapped there, dodging bombs, literally. And this is definitely a positive step in what's going on there, but people are unable to leave certain areas for a variety of reasons, whether it's health reasons, not having means. There are so many legitimate reasons why certain people can't just up and leave certain areas. And that brings me to the hospital crisis that is worsening. So although international press is not allowed into Gaza right now, which is a really important factor that I feel like is not being widely talked about, but we do know that Gaza is being further cut off from fuel and electricity, and this is affecting hospitals there. I mean, how could it not? They don't have unlimited supply of generators. So this is definitely affecting people who are in the worst situations, people who are injured, people who are dying. And long story short, it is creating a humanitarian crisis that was already there. It's just more salt in the wound. One of the biggest things that has happened, though, since I've been away has been that Congresswoman Tlaib was censured. And I listened to her speech. She is a Palestinian American, and she called for both a ceasefire as well as the release of the Israeli hostages. She was clearly emotional, feeling that Palestinian lives are valued less by the American government than that of their Israeli counterparts. But I was curious as to why she was being censured. What did she say? What exactly did she do? I dove into it and got us the details. It seems that it all stems from her using of the phrase "from the river to the sea." I couldn't find any other, major news outlets reporting on anything other than the use of that phrase from her, which, if you've been on social media in the past month, you will know this phrase has become incredibly commonplace. And yet, the phrase "from the river to the sea" has two incredibly different meanings depending on who you are talking to. You see, Israeli Jews and Jews generally attest that this phrase was created by extremists, twisted further by Hamas, and is suggesting that they want to wipe out both the state of Israel as well as the Jewish people from the river to the sea. And therefore, they feel that this phrase that spans backwards decades is a call for a genocide against Jews, period. And it's phrases like this that inspired the October 7th attacks, according to many Jewish people who are in my DMs right now, who have written to me, and they have attested that they've always known this chant to be an anti-Semitic one with anti-Semitic roots. And I'm a firm believer that we don't get to tell a group of people what is racist against their race. However, Congresswoman Tlaib, who is, again, a Palestinian American, said that the phrase to her is a, quote, aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate, end quote. And this really exemplifies the sort of disconnect that we're seeing between the two groups who are fighting here. There are people who see that as a completely genocidal, hateful, anti-Semitic thing to say, period. And then there's people who think it is this call for peace. So we're really seeing a fracture between these two groups who really, I'm seeing very little constructive dialogue between. It doesn't seem that either is interested in hearing the other one out. And that's something that I would really like to change. So if you guys see any productive dialogue online or otherwise, please send it my way. I would love to help shed some light on that because I think that's a big piece of what's missing here. According to CNN Politics, an American Reaper was shot down by Houthi rebels near Yemen. This is actually the type of headline that really irks me right now the most because I'm very wary of the U.S. being drawn into the conflict more directly. That could escalate things very quickly on a number of levels and draw the entire world into a war. Additionally, a school in Israel was struck by Syria, and this prompted Israel to strike back at Syria. Again, widening the conflict, and that's why I felt like this headline was important to get to you guys. Right now, none of these things serves as a tipping point, but that could change. So we are just keeping the closest eye on this that we can, and we'll definitely keep you guys posted if we see any other sort of red flags that things might be widening. Yesterday, two pieces of reporting stood out to me Sunday. One was by the Washington Post, and it brought to our attention basically Hamas intelligence showing that they envisioned October the 7th to be a much worse event than it was. The soldiers were meant to stay within Israel and basically go much further into the country, and the plans that they're discovering now even seem to include a second phase, something that Israelis have actually been worried about since this all began. The intentions behind October the 7th are something that is being pieced together now by maps and plans found on the soldiers that Israeli forces are taking out throughout Gaza. The second piece that came out yesterday that I found really interesting was one by NBC News, where Netanyahu is suggesting that he may be close to achieving a deal to get the hostages released by Hamas. Now, Netanyahu has a lot at stake right now. He already looks like a fumbling, bloodthirsty leader, not to mention a power-hungry one, and this is a dangerous and destructive combination. He is on the receiving end of infuriated protests, both worlds over by Palestinian sympathizers, as well as his own people who are enraged that he has yet to locate their friends and family members. Across Israel, people are calling for Netanyahu to resign, and there have even been protests to this effect within Israel. So he could be, bluffing right now, buying himself some time. But this situation is one that we are watching closely because it really seems to be where the Israeli people have their heart right now. And this is what they are looking to kind of slow down this offensive. So finding the hostages is a key part to this entire puzzle. Where things go from there, that is anybody's guess. It seems that Israel is just really focused on taking out Hamas, and they want to figure it all out later after they have accomplished that goal. So again, we'll definitely keep you guys posted. Tomorrow, we have a bunch more important issues to catch you guys up on. I just didn't want this episode to go crazy. So we'll play some more catch up tomorrow. Things like a Jewish school in Canada being shot up, plus a developing genocide in the DRC and more. So we have a lot to go over. We'll catch you guys up, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. That for today is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "Love takes off masks that we fear we cannot live without, and we know we cannot live within." Hey, August, do you want to say something? Can you say hi? Can you say hello? Say hello? You say bye? That was so good. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to listen. A rate and review on that platform or a shout out on social media would mean the world to us and help us to be able to keep creating the news du jour and reach more people who need a calmer space to consume the news. But the best way to support all of our work is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/Sugar-Free Media, and that is also linked in our show notes. You can follow us on social media at newsdujour.podcast on both Instagram and TikTok. You can follow my personal account at It's Annie Bowles on both platforms as well. Any little noises you may hear in the background are my rescue pup. He has a little separation anxiety and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour. Broadcasting from Oklahoma.